Okay. Hello, everybody. Today is an installment again on current events. Maybe I'll finish today. I'm not sure. Probably not. We'll certainly finish by next week. I really have to say, the whole point of this, really in many ways, because people think that hashkafa is about something that happened thousands of years ago. And what relevance does it have really today? And this kind of shiur affords me the opportunity to demonstrate certain ideas, which I think are really very important. First idea is, Torah is relevant literally up to today, period. Not only is Torah relevant in that sense, but the reason why it's relevant, I should say, is because it has hashkafa that explains the whole history of the Bria, of mankind. So therefore it's obviously completely relevant, Another thing which is interesting is to show you how relevant it is that you can actually interpret current events based on the principles and the facts of hashkafa. Does it mean one is always right if he interprets? Because I'm really interpreting all this. Obviously, nobody talks about this. But it's a great guess. I mean, it's a great way of understanding what could be, even if it's not, because I mentioned that things change because the Jews do certain mitzvahs or averos, and that may shift the whole design. And the Rebbe Shem also has Rachmanis, and he may shift the design. And and also somebody may do a mitzvah that will stop the whole thing, the evil or whatever. There's so many things that can change the system. But in the end, if the system remains stabilized and status quo, this is where it's headed. Another thing that I want to demonstrate always with this is the hand of God, Yad Hashem. It's an incredible demonstration to show you that God has not abandoned the Jewish people. On the contrary, He is incredibly involved in Jewish people. So really, you begin to see the tremendous hand of God, Yad Hashem. It's called the Hashgacha Pratis of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And again, also want to demonstrate is the fact that, we're obviously very near the end. That's what you clearly begin to see, is that we are very close to the end. Anyway, I want to open up the shiur with a Zoya. I don't remember if I said it or not, but it's a very important Zoya, because it demonstrates in many ways how close we are. And today I'm going to talk about certain ideas, I'm going to talk about Brexit, which is obviously very important. It's a world-shattering event. British exit from the European Union, and other things. And also what I think is going to happen basically in the next 15 years. Until now I've been speaking about American history and so on, Trump and what's going on and so on. But the Zohar says something very interesting. Most people think that Tchias HaMesim will happen immediately after Mashiach ben David comes, which is true. Actually the time period is Mashiach ben Yosef comes, and as we will see, he has certain specific tasks. And then Mashiach ben David arrives after him, and then as soon as he arrives, you have Tchias HaMesim, which obviously is resurrection of the dead. But most people think that the resurrection of the dead, which will happen after Mashiach ben David comes, everybody's going to get up. It's true that people get up, but not right away. People will get up in terms of a time period to adjust the amount of materialism that they've absorbed. The more gashmius, the more materialism, the more you were absorbed in Olam Hazeh, the longer it takes to get up. So the Zohar says, and this is a Zohar, it's a Raya Mehemna, which is one of the sections of the Zohar. The Zohar says that Tchias HaMesim will take 210 years from the time Mashiach ben David comes, which is interesting. And actually there's an argument. There's one Mandiyama there that says it will take, I think it's Rabbi Yehuda, it will take 214 years. That's the span of Tchias HaMesim. Not immediately. So that's interesting. If we know that the world ends, remember, the reign of the Mashiach himself has to end. And the world as we know it ends in the year 6000, which is the English year 2240. That's it. That's the end of Ilam Hazeh, basically as we know it. And it is also the end of the Messianic era. And after that begins a period of time called Chat Chorav, which is that the world begins to dematerialize and it begins to retransform into a spiritual component of which it really is, which I had talked about, Zikoch, purification or retransformation of the material world. So wait a minute. So therefore, if we assume that the world will end in 2240, if you subtract at least 210 years, what year do we arrive at? 2030. Now we're in 2016, so that's only, 14 years to go. What's 14 years? It's like a blip on a radar screen. It's nothing. Therefore, based on this Zohar, what will happen in the next 14 years is the following. Take a look at this. One is the clash of civilizations between Yishmael, Islam, and Edom, especially the clash between Yishmael and the Jews, right? Then the entrance of Mashiach ben Yosef, and his tasks are to bring all the Jews back to Israel, to build the Beis HaMikdash, okay, that's Kibbutz Goliath, and to build the Beis HaMikdash, to reveal the Or Rishon, the Messianic light, okay, and to also engage in the war between Gog and Magog, which is Gog from the land of Magog, and he will war against Mashiach ben Yosef. Imagine that, Mechemes Gog and Magog, all of this, Beis HaMikdash, Messianic light, Kibbutz Goliath, in gathering of the exiles. No, wait. This is going to happen in the next 14 years? That's like cataclysmic. It's astounding when you think about that. Any one of these events can blow your mind. When you add all four, it's like, what? Then, in the war of Gog and Magog, then Mashiach ben David appears and wipes out Gog from the land of Magog and all those people that went against Israel, Jewish people. Just wipes them out. And he doesn't wipe them out militarily. His mouth, with his piv, ruach piv. He just says, well, they're warring with us? Okay, let a plague go on them. And bemo, a plague goes on them. Because in the time of Mashiach ben David, we're looking at miraculous events. Okay, Mashiach ben Yosef is really, the world will continue the way it is. When you get to Mashiach ben David already, it's a whole different scenario. Okay, part of it is it's, even though it still functions with Teva, but Teva becomes violated in many, many ways. But one of the ways is that he can wipe out everybody, or he can wipe out whoever wars against the Jewish people. So this is Mashiach ben David, okay? So imagine if he has to come, and then you have Tchias HaMesim, which will take 210 years. So take a look at all those things that have to happen next 14 years. It's like astounding. That's one of the reasons why you see this incredible acceleration of things happening today. It's like you see two things going on. The tremendous acceleration of many, many different events, and you see an incredible descent into immorality, unethical behavior, immorality, and evil. It's like you can't believe what's going on. It's like, what's his name? The Secretary of Defense came out with an announcement 2-3 days ago that from now on they're accepting transgenders in the army. Is he out of his mind? What does transgenders have to do with the army? But not only that, he's demoralizing the entire army like that. An army isn't the place where you're supposed to demoralize them. And then forget about gays in the army. That's the Ravada. You know what I'm saying? What is happening? And now they want to make bathrooms where you either male or female can use the same bathroom. I don't know if they could use it at the same time. That I'm not sure about. But that's next. But anyway, when you look at the morality of the world, you've never seen such a descent, such a hefkeris. I mean, the fact that the world has now permitted gays and now they celebrate, and they're making a national shrine, the Stonewall bar where they started the revolution in 1969 or 68. What's going on here? And we know that God destroyed the world, the Mabul. One of the main reasons was because of homosexuality. Shinui Min. So the world is playing with God. They're like tempting him and daring him to destroy the world. And believe me, you don't want to tempt God. He's the last being that you want to tempt. In any case, so there's a tremendous descent, into what's called the Mem Teshar Tumah. It's like God is saying, listen, you guys, I remove, it's like less din less dayan. There's no judge or justice. You guys can go as far, you can descend as far down as you want, because in the end of time, there has to be choshech. And you see that in the second pasuk in Bereshis. And the earth was unformed and void, empty. And there was darkness on the face of the deep. Okay? Whatever that means. Then it says, V'ruach Elokim, and the Spirit of God, merachefes, hovers in the midst of the darkness, apnei hamoyim, on the face of the waters. Then it says, Vayomer Elokim yehiyo, let there be light. So the Baal HaTurim says that the gematria of Ruach Elokim merachefes, who is the Spirit of God that is hovering in the midst of the darkness on the face of the waters, right before Yehi Or, let there be light. So the Baal HaTurim says that the gematria of Ruach Elokim merachefes is gematria Zuhi Rucha Shemelech HaMashiach. This is the spirit of King Messiah. Amazing. So what do you see? Is that the Mashiach will come right before the Or, right? And he will come in the midst of the darkness. So you begin to understand why it's so incredibly dark. Darkness, of course, doesn't mean the absence of light. It means there's an enormous amount of tumah, of defilement, pollution, contamination, sin, iniquity, whatever you want to call it, immorality, and so on, evil. These things will dominate at the end. It's like the Moshe says, listen, I'm allowing you guys to do your thing. I'm not going to stop you, Let's see how far you guys can go. And boy, it's unbelievable how far the world goes, And I just as an aside, what's going to be the greatest tragedy of all is when the Moshe comes to pay them back. You don't even want to be around to look at what the payback is going to be, how they could take and destroy a world, and so on. Anyway, so therefore, this is the concept of the end. So therefore, what we begin to understand, it's incredible. According to the Zohar, in 14 years, and according to the Man Yomer says that Ches HaMesim spans 214 years, right? We're not looking at 14 years, we're looking at 10 years, which is even more frightening, But we can see, based on the Zohar, how close we are really to the end, And then when you add to the fact that Iran has been is legally allowed to build a nuclear device, it's all coming together. You see it, And only a guy like Obama could have made that possible. In fact, that's one of the main reasons, which I had mentioned a couple of shurim before. It's one of the main reasons why Obama's president. Because only somebody crazy like him would allow the greatest sponsor of terrorism the world has ever seen to acquire a nuclear weapon. It's insane. All because he wants a legacy? When you think about it, he has not just endangered Israel. He has endangered the entire world. Because everybody knows what those crazies are going to do. Because they all believe that the 12th Imam can only come up when the world is being destroyed. So exactly what they want to do. They are theologically directed to destroy the world. You see. So when you put all the convergences, when you put all the events together, you realize everything is converging on one point. And I mean everything. The proliferation of science, the internet as a device where a Mashiach can get on and teach the entire world. You can go through so many different things about what's happening and so on, And they're all converging at this one spot. But the most worrisome of all is the enormous proliferation, this gabrus of evil and tumah. That's what's really worrisome about this and so on, But in any case, from the Zohar we see this tremendous, how close we are to the end. Very interesting Zohar, In any case, fine. I want to talk about two things, and then I want to go on further, tell you what I think is going to happen. But the first thing I want to talk about is Brexit, British exit from the EU. What is that all about, really? Well, there are different levels of understanding. I'd like to cover several of them. Whatever happens to Britain will happen to Britain. I mean, Britain is not a slouch. I mean, Britain had the entire world under... Do you know there was a time when, like they said, the sun never set on the British Empire? You know, that's how extensive their holdings were. It was incredible. Even today, the British Commonwealth, you know, which is really Britain and Canada and Australia and a lot of places, you know, they all respect the Queen and so on, you know. Did I say happy birthday to Queen Elizabeth? No, happy birthday. Anyway, imagine 90 years old, what a schus. And she became, I think, Queen at 27. Imagine what that is. She's the longest reigning monarch in the history of Britain. Not the history of the world, but in the history of Britain and so on, you know. But anyway, and by the way, nobody knows this, but she's really a German. She's from the House of Hanover, if I remember correctly, and that is Germanic. She doesn't tell you that because nobody wants it, and this probably goes all the way back to what's his name, William the Conqueror, who was one of the Germanic kings in 1066. He invaded England and so on, you know. But he was a Normandy, in the Norman France, you know, and Normandy was part of Germany in those days, and he invaded the Saxons, which are England and so on and so forth. But anyway, but she's really from the House of Germany. It's interesting. Anyway, so Britain they'll do fine. Don't forget about Obama. They'll do fine. But it's amazing to watch Britain, which is the second greatest economy in Europe after Germany. And it's the greatest militarily. Britain has a great army. I mean, now it does, you know. But and they exited. So, like, what does that mean? So, from the Pashup shot, I believe, right, that it's a tremendous einish to Europe. The exit of Britain severely diminishes many aspects of Europe. Because if you think about it, what is Europe? The real main countries in Europe are basically what? It's Germany, France, and Britain. Everybody else, who are they? I don't want to insult Italy, but the rest of them are what? Third world. This is Spain, Greece. Then there's all the small colonies, countries like Holland, Luxembourg, right? Liechtenstein. I shouldn't forget Liechtenstein, the great world power called Liechtenstein, and of course the greatest world power of all is Monaco, right? Monaco is, and so on. But so it's a tremendous blow to Europe.
They exited from where?
Who?
They exited from where exactly?
They what?
Oh,
The EU.
Oh.
They exited from the European Union. Yeah, there's 28 countries, and they exited. And nobody expected that. What's his name? David Cameron went to sleep that night. They thought they had all sewed up, of course, and he really put his reputation on the line, which is interesting. He was a fool to do that, because now he has to quit because he looked so bad. He's got to get out. He's foolish to do that, but okay. Obviously, the Bershom made him a cup. But the main idea is that they thought, and all of a sudden, hey, they're 4.52 million, not 52, 52% exit, leave, and 48% remain, and they were killed. Okay. What does the Russians seem to be doing? Well, it's interesting that this will diminish the stature of Europe. I mean, like I say, it's, and I think some of the countries have already said they also want to leave. So what you're really beginning to see is the dissolution of the European Union in a certain sense. If other countries leave, then that's a snowball. It's called a domino effect, and they're out. Why does the Russians want to do that to Europe? And I believe one of the obvious reasons, it's an einish. It's a punishment to Europe. Europe has become a formidable anti-Semitic region of the world. It's incredible, the BDS and so on and so forth. I mean, there's so much stuff that these guys are involved with. It's incredible how stupid people can be. They see what the Arabs are doing. They take money and they never deliver to their people. Their people are dying, and they still keep giving. They gave billions to Arafat. What did Arafat do? You know, he used it for himself, and they say even Abbas, it's a joke. Yet they don't care. They're murdic anti-Semitic. They always were anti-Semitic. So Bonsham said, it seems so. I had enough. It's enough, you know. I'm going to diminish your stature, right? So now who cares? What Europe will say, okay, who cares? The only ones you really have to worry about in Europe really is France and Germany. You know, and if France exit, that's over with, you know. So he's diminished the ability or the clout of the European Union, which is very interesting. And therefore, their word now against Israel will be severely diminished in terms of their clout, their power. And I believe it's a tremendous einish to Europe. Right? That's the first level of perception. But the second level of perception is really what you want to hear. That's the interesting part about it. Because it doesn't involve Europe. It involves what's about to happen. So I want to talk about a very, very unusual man. His name is Vladimir Putin. I want to tell you what I think is going to happen. And what in the world is he doing at the helm of Russia? Because it's a miracle, you see. Putin's a very interesting person. Okay, so the first thing to wonder is like, what's going on here? I mean, all the Russian dictators hated Jews. They hated them. From all the way from the beginning, from the czars, even before that, you know, they hated Jews. It's a place that's rife, saturated with Jewish blood. When you look at all the pogroms that these guys have done in Russia, it's astounding how many Jews they've killed. But besides the amount of Jews that they've killed, they destroyed Judaism. Most Jews are gone. Most Russians are gone. You know, okay, now it's a little different, but in then, you know, I'll never forget. I heard a story once. You know, I mean, it's heartening. It's disheartening. You know, but so there was a family in Russia. This one, when you have, I forgot whether it was Brezhnev, one of those characters. You know, I mean, talking about Rishonim Gemurim. You know, but there was a family that they used to eat on Yom Kippur, and it was a Suda. They used to make a Suda on Yom Kippur. You know, they invited the whole family. So you say, excuse me, what? You make a commemoration, a celebration on Yom Kippur? So they once asked him, well, what's the story here? He said, well, we don't remember what Yom Kippur is about, but we know from our grandparents and so on and so forth that Yom Kippur was special to the Jews. We figure a day that's special to the Jews, you probably have a meal, right? So we made a commemorative meal. We get the whole family together, and we eat on Yom Kippur, you know, because that's probably what it was, right? It's not what you do on a holiday for the Jews. Could you imagine how far they were from Judaism, Yiddishkeit? It's astounding. All because of communism and all those Rishonim that were communists. Astounding when you think about that. And this is good. At least they remembered Yom Kippur was a holiday. What about all those Jews that don't even know anything about Judaism? So not only did they kill Jews left and right, they destroyed their religion and so on, you know. Anyway, so therefore the history of Russia really, essentially, is really a history of anti-Semitism. It's really what it is. So the question is, what happened? How did they get a guy like Putin? Now, I want to read you, I took this because Zman wrote an article, Zman magazine, called The Putin Enigma. So they have a very short biography. I don't know if you guys read it. You guys read it? Very interesting, you know, to read about this guy, you know. But when you begin to read it, it strikes you. I'm going to read this and quote from them, okay? What they say, and then I'm going to comment what I think is how it's part of the divine plan. Because this is so far out that it needs an explanation. And I'm always tempted by those things that need an explanation to try to explain it. Okay, you guys with me? Now you guys can see if I know how to read. Crushing Anti-Semitism, Putin style. That's the name of the article. Okay. Putin has ruthlessly suppressed violent forms of anti-Semitism in Russia. Incredible. To the relief of the Russian Jewish community. He has also made it a point to attend Jewish functions. It's not just that he's stopping anti-Semitism, he comes to Jewish functions, right? Such as the opening of Jewish Museum and Tolerance Center in Moscow, right? To which he contributed $50 million of state funds. That's a commitment. And even symbolically donated 1 month of his presidential salary. You believe what this guy? It's like, what? Who are we talking about here? We're talking about an Ohev Yisrael, a Jew lover. There he was joined by the then president of Israel, Shimon Peres, and Russia's chief rabbi, Ber Lazar, sometimes dubbed Putin's rabbi. Imagine, Putin's rabbi. Now, Putin also attended Hanukkah celebrations and conveyed warm messages to Jews on Rosh Hashanah. Utterly unprecedented. I mean, this is incredible, right? Especially from a nationalist Russian leader. You know, it's like Ripley's Believe It or Not. That's what it sounds like. Now, Russia and the Soviet Union have a long, sordid and bloody history of anti-Semitism. The Russian Tsars enacted anti-Semitic legislation, subjecting the Jews to an inferior status and forcing them to live in the Pale of Settlement far away from the large cities. It's obvious that's what they want, incredible anti-Semites. In fact, the word pogrom originated in Russia and refers to violent attacks by non-Jews on Jewish civilians in the Russian Empire. You know, the first known pogrom is believed to have occurred in Odessa in 1821. Some Russians blame Jews for the assassination of Tsar Alexander II in 1881, which triggered pogroms and discriminatory May laws in 1882. Anti-Semitic laws and pogroms led many Jews to reassess life in the Russian Empire, causing more than 2 million to emigrate to the United States and Eretz Israel. I mean, obviously it's Gehenna. It was a Mamish Gehenna in Russia. As late as 1990s, Jews were scapegoated as the source of Russia's economic and social problems. Well, 25 years ago? Several of the prominent Russian oligarchs, means groups that controlled Russia, were Jewish. And angry Russian commentators and politicians made sure to emphasize that fact, obviously to promote anti-Semitism. Now, political commentator E.C. Liebler, someone who met with Soviet ministers and officials for three decades to promote the liberation of Soviet Jewry, wrote, this is what he writes: when the Soviet Union existed, communist Russia, I was able to appreciate firsthand the obsessive anti-Semitism underlying the Kremlin's policy toward Israel and the Jews. Obsessive means they just couldn't get it out of their mind. Now look at what he says. There are no rational explanations for Putin's extraordinary positive attitude toward Jews. There's no rational explanation for this, which some have gone as far as to describe as being motivated by philo-Semitism, Ohev Yisrael. Right? It's astounding. According to him, there's no rational explanation. But there is. But he says it would appear. Some say he was influenced as a youngster by his Jewish German teacher, which we'll read about in a second. He may also be highly sophisticated and pragmatic, and having seen the outcome of Soviet anti-Semitism, which was very destructive, because the Jews are always very good economically, may have come to a realization that Jewish support would represent an asset of many levels. Okay? And then it goes into the laws that Putin has passed to prevent anti-Semitism, to convict people of anti-Semitism. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's not just, make sure that the Jews are not destroyed. We are talking about a guy that is actively trying to save Jews, promote Jews, and promote their religion. I mean, talking about Russia, You know what it's like? Lamar David, right? It's like the Sultan is now promoting mitzvahs. Think about that. That's what it sounds like, right? Putin has also personally intervened in specific cases of anti-Semitism, and so on. And it brings down that he intervened in a certain case against a Jewish person, and he intervened. He reduced drastically the sentence that they gave him. And then nevertheless, this pining for the Soviet past has not had a significant anti-Semitic component. In fact, anti-Semitism does not seem to be a large-scale problem in Russia today. You believe this? In recent polls, almost 60% of Russians have a good or very good attitude toward Israel, compared to less than 20% bad or very bad. In 2013, the Russian Jewish Congress documented only 10 anti-Semitic attacks and acts of vandalism compared to dozens in France. This is in Russia. I gotta get to this one, right? On January 19th, 2016, it's a couple of months ago. Listen to this. This is really funny. At a meeting in the Kremlin with the European Jewish Congress, Putin met with the Jewish Congress. Putin expressed that in light of recent anti-Semitic attacks in Europe, European Jews should take refuge in Russia. I mean, you realize what he's saying, right? Let the Jews come to us then. Putin replied upon hearing about rising European anti-Semitism, adding that, right, during the Soviet period they were leaving the country and now they should return. You know? So Jonathan Arkush, chairman of the European Jewish Community Congress General Assembly, suggested that Putin was saying it in a lighthearted way. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The reaction of all of us around the table was to laugh. Everybody was laughing. You know, it's like the fox inviting the chickens, right, into his den. This is why you guys come to live, because everybody else is out there trying to kill you. Want to come to us. This is the fox, right? And President Putin smiled when he said it. So I think he was probably aware of the irony, you know. Arkush said, nevertheless, Arkush admitted that the offer highlights an uncomfortable truth for Europe. Putin has been far more successful in combating anti-Semitism than European leaders. It's astounding. Look, this is what's called a mapecha. This is a revolution in the Russia's attitude toward the Jews. Now, you need to understand why. President Putin's apparently positive feeling toward Jews may have roots in some important relationships from his early life. Now you see the hashgacha elyono. Remember I talked about last week Trump? What the Moshe did for him? He made him a billionaire, so he's not subject to any special interests, and he'll deliver his promises. The second thing is that Trump is in real estate in New York, right? And we know most people, not most, but a lot of people in real estate are Jews. So he has a tremendous liking and familiarity with Jews. And the third thing is his daughter Ivanka, she's from. You know, she's modern, but she's from. You know, so he clearly, and his son-in-law, not his son-in-law, and the chief legal advisor to his real estate empire is from a guy who he wants to make a liaison to Israel. I mean, you know, how the Moshe sets this up is incredible. But look what he did for Putin. The question is why, which I will go into. Putin grew up in one of Leningrad's toughest neighborhoods, and his parents were not a strong presence in his life, which basically means he was abandoned. Not literally, but, you know, I mean, certainly emotionally. I mean, You're on your own, kid. A religious Jewish family that lived in his apartment block in Leningrad welcomed him into their home. Isn't that interesting? And shared their meager accommodations with him so he would be less tempted to roam the streets. What a chesed, right? They took him in. It's so they became surrogate parents. In an autobiography, Putin describes the family as observant Jews who did not work on Saturdays, and the man would study the Bible and Talmud all day long. What does that sound like, you know? It's a kollel young man. Except he wasn't a kollel, because if he went to kollel, he'd be killed, right? Once I even asked him what he was muttering, and he explained to me what this book was, and I was immediately interested. He told him what the Gemara is. So that's one guy. Obviously, they had a tremendous influence. What shows that Putin has a tremendous hakaras hatov. Anyway, so that was one. Putin's judo coach in his youth, Anatoly Ralin, was Jewish. His judo coach. He trained Putin from ages 13 to 28. That's why Putin is a black belt in judo. And once described himself as Putin's second father. Imagine what a relationship he had with Putin. I was with him 15 years. His mother died, his father died, I am a second father. You begin to realize what's going on here, the connection that he had to Jews. On Rakhlin's 75th birthday, in May 2013, Putin presented him with a Medal of Honor for his achievements in Russian judo. You see. When he died later, that is, Ralin died, the judo teacher, Putin issued a statement that he was deeply saddened and that Ralin's death was a big, irreplaceable loss for all of us. Reportedly, Putin attended the funeral and even shed tears. He was crying for a Jew. Because obviously he was a tremendous surrogate father to Putin. Then one more. When Putin traveled to Israel in 2005, he paid a surprise visit to his old high school German teacher that was mentioned before, a Jewish woman named Mina Yuditskaya, Berliner. She hadn't seen him since she made Aliyah in 1973. But his special visit, so he visited her, right? But his special visit proved that she had been a significant influence on his life during his formative years. Could you imagine Putin comes to Israel and the whole Knesset, I mean, there's Putin with Russia, everybody's there, a welcome committee, right? So they ask him, what can we do for you? Where do you want to go? I mean, the whole government is at his beck and call, right? She says, well, I want to visit my old German Jewish teacher in Tel Aviv, right? They probably had a heart attack. Listen to this, right? Now, during the meeting, the 94-year-old widow, this was in 2005, mentioned that she lived in a rundown apartment in Tel Aviv's Florentine district. Listen to this. By the time Putin departed Israel, she was the owner of a new apartment in the heart of downtown Tel Aviv, courtesy of a former student. Isn't that incredible?
Wow.
Putin also has a circle of wealthy and influential Jewish friends. Some have been buddies since his childhood, like Arkady and Boris Rottenberg, who trained together with him under Coach Ralin, judo. They're buddies, Jewish buddies. The brothers stuck close to their childhood pal, Putin, right, and have benefited enormously, such as $5.5 billion in construction contracts. They were awarded in connection with the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics. Each brother is estimated to have a net worth of around $2 billion. Not bad. What am I trying to show here? Like, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, It's like the guy said, it's like, it's irrational. He doesn't understand why Putin is a philo Judaism, which means an Oiv Yisrael. And it says here that, whenever they have meetings, whatever, he's Jewish. This guy Beryl, or whatever his name is, the chief rabbi, is a pal of his. I mean, he's about as close as you can get to a guy who's an Oiv Yisrael. It's astounding. But you see, what did the Moshem do? Now let's take a look at it at a larger scale. Why is he doing this? Not only that, you know, Putin should never have been the prime minister, whatever he is, right? You don't realize it was a stroke of luck, as they say, because what happened was he was a KGB, he was in Germany for all the years, and then all of a sudden he went back and he became an important right-hand guy to Yeltsin, you see, and Yeltsin was very corrupt. I mean, Yeltsin was like, you know, forget it, right? You know, so Yeltsin knew that his time was coming to the end, right? But he was afraid that whoever's going to take over his job, which is the chief guy of the prime minister of the Soviet Union, is going to convict him. He's going to go after him. You know how much money the guy must have stolen? So he appointed Putin to be the prime minister because he knew Putin is very loyal to him, won't convict him. Believe this? So Putin got in, right, in order for Yeltsin to avoid jail time, right? That's how he got in. Once he was in, of course, he took advantage of it, right? Eliminated all his rivals and all that kind of stuff, which is usually what goes on. But why did the Mashiach do that? Clearly the Mashiach said, enough is enough. Russia is the Rash of Esav, if you remember what I said, that Esav is divided into three parts. Russia is the Ra of Esav. That's why communism, which is incredibly atheistic, can only survive 70 years. And that's the Vayives Esav is Bechira, and Esav despised the Bechira. That was communism, because Russia is really the Russian Orthodox Church. It's really Edom. It's really what it is. It's Christian. And he put him in Oyev Yisrael to make sure he connected him, he made sure that his parents, whatever, wouldn't take care of him. And as a result of that, he developed tremendous friends, associations with Jews who were very kind to him. And he never forgot it. Could you imagine Putin visits Israel and everybody's running after him to please him and so on? And he says, I want to see my Alta Boba, you know, my Jewish teacher friend in Tel Aviv. And then a guy pays for a real, I guarantee the apartment must have been deluxe in the downtown Tel Aviv. I mean, you know, what are cars at Toiv? It's astounding. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what's going on here? Wait a minute. Russia is evil, right? But we find now that it's true that Putin is a terrible dictator. There's no question about that, right? But why is the Russian want Putin to be head of the Russian government? What's going on here? You had a question?
Interestingly, of all the world leaders on the world stage, Putin.
Who does that remind you of? Putin. Putin looks at the West, he couldn't care less. Took over Ukraine, Crimea, no problem. You know, he's probably got his sights on other stuff, you know. He couldn't care less. He'd rather not alienate the West. But this man defies the West, and he laughs at Obama, you know. What does that sound like? Sounds like Trump, doesn't it? The Bosham is picking him because of the same concept, the defiance. Now you know why he learned judo. Because what is a guy, when a guy learns judo and he's a black belt, I think Putin is a 5th degree or 6th degree black belt. You don't want to mess with Putin, that's for sure. You know what I'm saying? Guys who are really masters of the martial arts, boy, are they defiant. They're not afraid of anybody. You see? All of this is incredible hashgacha, that he should have an incredible characteristic called unbelievable arrogance and defiance, and also be very, very intelligent. That's what you see so far. The question we have to ask ourselves is why? That's why. But there's no question that you begin to see that he is chosen for a specific mission, just like Trump is. He is chosen for a specific mission to defy the world. Why? Anybody figure out? This is called Prophecy Workshop. You know enough information to figure it out.
He has to come to the aid of Klal.
Oh, very good.
Together with Trump, they'll destroy the Arabs.
Beautiful. Exactly. If I had a medal, I'd pin it on both of you guys. Because what the bunch, but you have to add one more thing. But you have to add one more thing. What's going to happen? Israel war with Iran and begin to destroy it. Basically, I believe Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, right, Hamas, all these guys are going to jump in the fray. But not only that, it'll be the last attempt of the Arabs. And who will also jump in, probably, will be the Israeli Arabs, right? Now the problem is this. We know that the Israel will be incredibly condemned. We know that. It goes on all the time. Even when Israel's right, they're always wrong, right? They're always condemned, because that's the anti-Semitism of the world. Therefore, Trump is going to aid them, which I said last week. That's why the bunch of them wants him. He will defy the world, right, America, and enable Israel to do its job, you see. But I believe that something much worse, what Israel is doing is much worse. I believe that Israel will evict the Arabs because of the enormous danger that the Arabs now present to the integrity of the Jewish state. But what's always the problem? What's the problem?
The EU.
The EU is one, but what's happening with the EU? They're being diminished. So Bonsham is taking out the possible obstructions of Trump, right? So the EU is being diminished, correct? You see why? Not only is it an einish, now you understand that Bonsham is removing the capacity of Europe to obstruct the resistance against the world when they begin to attack the Arabs and to defend themselves.
What about the UN?
That's not the UN. It's really the nations that control the UN. So the Arabs themselves are being destroyed, right? America's defending Israel. The EU is now a third-rate class. But who's always the greatest obstructions against Israel? Who? Russia. They're always the greatest. They're the ones who opposed Israel all the time. Remember the 1975 UN, right? Where they said Zionism is the same as what? Racism. That was a famous statement that they said. They're the ones who came up with that stuff. So therefore Russia's always the obstruction. So the question is, even if Trump defends Israel, right? Russia's going to go crazy. Because Russia sides usually on the side of who? Of the Arabs. You know, Iran, you know, right? So what happened? The Muslim says, Zog sich nicht, in Yiddish, which means don't worry. I am now going to put an Oyev Yisrael in Russia. So now Russia and Trump are going to defy the world. Wow. What a partnership. Isn't that interesting? That's what you see is happening. If you really think about it, it's incredible. Because what's happening in Russia is unbelievable. Like this guy said, it doesn't make sense. It's never happened before. Because the Russia now is weakening the enemies of the Jews, right? And he's strengthening the people, the allies of the Jews. But Russia was always against the Jews. And not only Russia's part of the Security Council. They've always made tremendous problems. So what the Bolshevik did is incredible. He said, just remove the enemy. How? Put a guy like Putin in. So Putin is not only an Oyev Yisrael, he's a tremendous maket toiv. That's the critical. There are guys who like Israel, right? But they don't go to that extent. He's going all the way, you see. He's maket toiv, and so on. They $50 million to some Jewish museum.
It's real estate television.
It's like, and there's another reason why. Another reason why Putin likes Israel, which funny he said that. Not only is he an Oyev Yisrael, where he protects the Jews, and he gives money to the Jews, he's giving money to all kinds of organizations all over Russia to promote Judaism. In fact, he's probably the biggest Marbitz Torah in Russia. You know what I'm saying? He's head of the Kirov movement in Russia, you know. But Putin said something very interesting. There is between 500 and 1 million Russians in Israel. So Putin said, hey, I got 1 million of my citizens there. Most of these guys have passports of Russia. So I got all my people, I got to protect them. So therefore I have to protect Israel. You see? So the whole concept of a Russian, immigration to Israel was to again solidify Putin's connection to Israel, the Jewish state, because now Israel has become a Russian satellite. Interesting.
Russia's been
directly in conflict with the Arabs because of their oil.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. They don't want to economically get destroyed,
who?
Russia,
Yeah,
because of the competition with the Arabs. The Arabs are desperate to sell oil now.
yeah, well, yeah. But what I'm saying is, therefore, what the Russians see the Russians doing is weakening the enemies of the Jews. Because it's not just, I believe, it's not that just Jews will will really war against the Arabs and really wipe them out. The problem is also that I believe they try to evict the Arabs. Nobody, the world will not stand for that, you see. So therefore, if Russia and the U.S. stand with the Jews and the Europe is now severely diminished, it'll work. But it's incredible to see the chess pieces going on here. I mean, you have to appreciate this chess game, where you see what the Buncham is doing in order to, something that will occur many years from now, many, many years, whatever that means, and what the Buncham is doing.
Putin's a lot closer to evicting the Arabs than the Israeli cabinet is.
Yeah, it's true.
Does the Orient have anything to do with any of this?
The Orient is who?
Like China, Japan?
Well,
India?
Israel is forming close ties with Japan and even China.
Even if they're not at the top, they're still power.
Because once you're connected with a country economically, then that's much less incentive for the country to go against you. And Israel has now turned, because Obama is terrible. So Israel has now turned. They're incredible friends with what's his name in India. What's the guy's name again? The head of India. He's an Ohev Israel also. You know why? It's amazing, because there was a time that he used to be the head of a province in India, and I forgot exactly why, but people were against him, and Israel supported him. They were behind him in terms of whatever he was doing, and he never forgot that. So now he's completely, I forgot his name. Come on, you guys. What's his name? The Indian Prime Minister. Okay. Yeah, Goldberg. Goldstein, Goldberg, Weiss, it's all the same, right? So therefore, India is in love with Israel. They want to really do things together. I think they're forming real contacts now with Japan and China and so on. So, which is very important. So they also will be much more inclined to be with Israel. But we see the entire chess game being set up so that in the future, L'Asad Lavoi, things will miraculously happen where Israel will be protected.
And the UN
So on.
has a very important position filled by Israeli, right?
The who?
In the UN,
The what?
there's an Israeli, Danan, was a very important
Oh,
position.
Danny Danon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course he's for Israel. I mean, but
It's
he's
interesting that the UN was always very
Anti.
against Israel, anti.
is what now for?
No, gave this position over to
Oh yeah, he got an official position. Yeah, which is unusual. Yeah. Well, what's also interesting, you have to remember also, is Israel is expert in certain technologies that the world needs. They are experts in water conservation, agriculture. In the world is, there's no water in California. There's many places are suffering tremendous droughts. And Israel is an expert in conservation of water, agricultural growth. They've revolutionized agriculture in many ways. They just and so on. So therefore, the world needs them. And not only that, then you have Israel is now about to become one of the greatest gas exporters. The Leviathan fields, Tamar fields, and I heard that they discovered oil under Golan. I mean, Israel is going to be up there in oil and gas and all that, and everybody's going to, once you need somebody economically, then of course you're not going to go against them. Why would you do that? You see? But you see clearly, and what's into also, I mentioned Saudi Arabia. I told you in 6 years, Saudi Arabia is about to go down in oil, which is incredible. That's why the Saudi economy is now trying to specialize in many areas outside of oil, because they realize the handwriting's on the wall, and so on. So you clearly see the fall of Yishmael, the rise of Israel, and the ultimate rise where Israel will, of course, war with Ishmael.
How does that work with the rise of Edom?
What was that?
Explaining a rise in Edom as well.
Correct. Yes. So what is your question?
What happens then?
What happens with the rise of Edom?
Yeah, you're left as declines all against the new powerhouse Edom. It
No.
just revitalize itself.
No, Edom won't be.
Right,
That
you're just saying Trump and America, America making America great again, and Putin is making Russia great again.
So what's your question?
So now you have Edom back into a powerhouse. It's gonna
Yes.
bring in Clydesdale. You
You're not asking a question.
To destroy
You mean
the Arabs.
what?
can destroy the Arabs, but then you have this, then Edom starts becoming Edom again, like who they really are, to persecute Clydesdale.
No, they won't, because this is the Toiv. These are the guys who love Israel.
So that's it? Edom's finished?
No, they're not
There's no
finished.
battle with Edom?
No, not really. No,
Okay.
not with the Toiv Sheba Edom.
So who's the battle with?
Europe, but it's not a real battle, because the real heat of the battle was absorbed in World War II. But I thought you were going to ask a different question. You got to ask this question. We know that we see Europe is becoming incredibly anti-Semitic. That we know, and even Britain can't stop it. I mean, Arabs all over the place, you know. So even if they're not because of, you know, the Arab nations, you got they what to call them lone wolves, whatever it is, right? You have these kind of guys, you know, and therefore Europe is becoming a tremendously threatening place for Israel. I mean, for Jews in their countries, and this is pushing the Jews out, right? That's going to cause. I mean, in France, they're all ready to leave, you know, as it gets worse, and it will get worse because these guys multiply like rabbits, the Arabs. You know what I'm saying? And so therefore, I mean, forget about it. Then they're going to take political power, the Arabs. You know, the people are going to go with them because they want the votes of the Arabs and so on. So I can understand how the Jews in Europe will go to Eretz Israel. But how the Jews in America are going to go to Eretz Israel if America becomes great and Tov? What's going to motivate them? I thought you would ask that question.
I would assume that at one point, they're going to realize America is not safe for Jews.
No, it's not true. I don't believe that's going to happen.
Where's the termination of Amalek? And the Allah of Esav saying Yaakov.
Okay,
It can be Tov Shabbat and there's still Esav saying Yaakov.
fine. But Sinai and Sinai, America was good to the Jews for how many hundreds of years? Where was the sinner? You know, the Tov Sheba Esav does not hate Europe and Russia when it was under the former Soviet Union. That was the Sinai Yaakov. But the Tov Sheba Esav is Tov Sheba Esav. It doesn't have that
Still
sinner.
Esav.
But it does. It's Tov Sheba Esav, you know, which means it has a certain amount of, let's say, indifference, but it doesn't hate them. You see.
That's what I'm saying.
So the question is-
So if you take Tov Shabbat Esav,
Tov is also-
they get us by giving us democracy.
Whatever. But the Tov Sheba Esav doesn't have the sinner that the other parts of Esav have. There are differences. Anyway, so the question is what will happen, or how will the people in America, why will they leave for Israel, or and so on, if it's really good? That's really the question.
Yeah, who said that?
That's kibbutz, because that's kibbutz goliath.
That's going to be spurred because of Mashiach. That is-
Well,
it doesn't say that it has to
that's
be
what.
Aliyah. It has to be.
Well,
Mashiach.
okay, that's what I'm going to talk about next week.
And where does Mashiach ben
The
Yosef
end
come
of
in?
time. What?
Where does Mashiach ben Yosef come in?
Where does
What
he
fight
come in?
if Trump and Putin are killing the
Oh, and
Arabs?
did I tell you? I once told you, right? What's the gematria of Mashiach of Trump?
Mashiach ben David.
I told you that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I told you why. Because he will be part of the assisting of the Mashiach to come this way.
And what
By
about
a-
Mashiach ben Yosef?
Right? Where's he? Next week. Next week, I go into really Mashiach ben Yosef, the whole concept of what I think is going to happen in the next
Who's go?
15 or who's going and what's going to happen in the next 15 years. That's all. So next week will probably, I'll wrap up the whole current events. Wow, 5 shurim. Interesting to watch the chess game. Any questions?
So where is the destruction of Amalek? We still need to have the final destruction of Amalek, no?
Yes, we do.
So who's that?
That's Gog and Magog.
But who is the Amalek? Who's the rational? We said that Russia's the rational Adam, and now they're becoming Tov. So we're
Oh, you mean, well, we'll talk about it next week,
okay.
who that could be. But the main idea is what after you put these things together, what happens next? And there's something very important that's coming up, which I have not mentioned, which we'll talk about next week, and that sort of like brings everything together.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.